Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to the Average Joe Sports Show. This is Braden Good, and today I'm going to be on my own. However, I think I got a pretty decent show planned for you today. It'll be a little short, but I'm going to go over my NBA power rankings, take the top 10 that are there. So let me just go ahead and get my screen pulled up here. All right, so here we go. We got my NBA power rankings. All right, so my top 10. So top 10. First off, we have Steph Curry, who is having himself a pretty good year. For these rankings, though, I've only taken the last 10 games into account because I'm not focused on the body of work. I'm focused on what they've done lately. So Steph Curry, he's averaging 33, almost 33 and a half points per game, 5.4 assists, 5.4 rebounds, shooting 55 from the field goal and 52% from the three-point line, which is very impressive. I mean, those numbers, those aren't numbers that you hit very often. So the fact that he's able to do that, even if it is only over a 10-game stretch, I mean, Stephen Curry, he was my number 2 pick in the draft that I made with my buddy the other day, primarily because he's a three-point shooter. That is what he does. That is who he is. And it is impressive, to say the least, that he's able to keep up with that shooting. And fortunately for a player like Stephen Curry, that shooting is going to age extremely well. It's not like some players like a Russell Westbrook, whose game hasn't really evolved much. Russell Westbrook is kind of dependent upon his athleticism to succeed. And if that's not going well for him, then, I worry for him as he gets older that his play is definitely going to decline even more than it already has a little bit. So that is definitely a concern of mine. And I would be concerned about that if I was a fan of Russell Westbrook or a fan of the Wizards. I feel like they made a good swap, but number 2 on my power ranking is going to be Nikola Jokic, who is having a great season. He's actually in conversation to be in the MVP race. Over the last 10 games, he's averaging almost 30 points a game, 11 rebounds, and 6.7 assists, which is very rare for a big man. You don't see a lot of big men that are able to pass the ball and then make the plays that he's able to make. So the fact that he's able to do that consistently on a regular basis, almost averaging 7 assists per game as a center, is very impressive. And he's been and his team has been on a bit of a hot streak as well. Or I guess he's been on a hot streak. I guess his team hasn't been doing so good. So that's a bit it's a bit rough that he's doing, that they went from being in the Western Conference Finals to struggling a little bit this season. They're sitting at number 7 in the West, but that's not his fault. He's doing the best that he can to get the team to where they want to go. Shooting 46% from the three-point line, which is also impressive for a center. I know that today's NBA is all about spacing the floor and making defenses work and stretching out and stretch fives and all that, but to see a big man shoot 46% is a rare thing, and it's impressive that he's able to do that. Number 3 on my list, we have Luka Doncic, who his team is performing very poorly, but over the last 10 games, he's been very sharp, averaging a double-double, but averaging close to 30 points per game, shooting 84% from the free throw line and 47% field goal. So not the best, but it's still not bad. And his Mavericks are in the bottom half of the Western Conference standings as a sub 500 team, which is a shame because they were in the playoffs last season. So hopefully they'll be able to turn it around. Luka will be able to lead. Luka will be able to elevate his teammates to the level that he's been playing at. I mean, but averaging almost 30 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. Those are pretty hard numbers to top. And it's unfortunate that his team isn't doing better. Number 4 on my list, we have Joel Embiid, who is another candidate who's also receiving MVP votes, and there's a possibility to win that if he keeps up this play. Over the last 10 games, averaging almost 33 points a game, averaging 1.3 blocks, 10 rebounds, 35 and the 35% 3-point percentage, that's not great. I wish Joel Embiid would play a little bit closer to the basket on a more regular basis. I feel like, yeah, he can spread the floor. Yeah, he can shoot, but I feel like he limits himself a lot by what he does. What he needs to do is to not shoot the ball from outside so much, but if you watch him in the low block, I mean, you have a guy who's 7 feet tall, 270, 280, something like that, and he's got post moves kind of like Hakeem Olajuwon. I mean, I took him as my starting five because I couldn't get Jokic, but he is definitely the second best center in the league currently, and I want to see him play with his back to the basket a bit more low block shots, more working his opponent, and just getting to the rack because that's what he can do. I think he's good at it. Sitting at number 5, we're getting to Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was the MVP last season, and he's still having a phenomenal year. I mean, 29.6 points, 6.1 assists, 12.2 rebounds, 1.4 blocks, shooting 60% from the. To be honest, I probably should have ranked. I think looking at his stats again, I probably should have ranked him up there a little bit higher. Maybe put him at number 4. Maybe even go so high as number 3 and drop those two down a little bit. Look at the stats now, sort of in comparison to Joel Embiid. But I also feel like he's very limited in what he can do. Embiid can stretch the floor. He can go out there and shoot the ball. And Giannis really can't, unfortunately. Then I think that's one of the biggest problems of his game is that if he can't get to the rim, if he can't punish you inside, if he can't punish you down low and getting out in transition, his game is very limited to what he can do. It's a little unfortunate. And you've seen in the playoffs the last couple of years, teams sort of wall off the paint from him, and he has to pass the ball, and his supporting cast isn't strong enough to help him out with that. So it's good for the Bucks that he signed a big long-term deal. Whether that's good for Giannis or not, I can't really say for sure that it is or that it will be. I guess we'll have to see if he wins a ring, but they need to get him some more support. They need to get him some more help, so that way defenses have to actually consider that he's an option and if he could develop an outside shot, kind of the same thing as Ben Simmons, who is another extremely talented player, good on the defensive end, long, and is very explosive in transition, but they don't have a jump shot. And in today's NBA, that is one of the most important things you can have is that jump shot. Which gets me to my number 6 in the power rankings, LeBron James, who is working on his jump shot this season. He has the second highest 3-point percentage of his career, next to only when he was back with Miami Heat, he's shooting 39% over the last 10 games, 8.1 rebounds, 8.5 assists, 27.4 points over the last 10 games. So over the last 10 games, he's going a little bit above what his season averages are. Season average, I believe he's at about 25 points, 7 assists, and 8 rebounds, something like that per game is what his stats are for the whole season. So these last 10 games, he's actually gone up a little bit, shooting better. And I mean, what can you say about the greatest player on the planet? I mean, there's a lot of people who will say, oh, Giannis is the greatest player, or maybe Kevin Durant. And while they're phenomenal, I just feel like LeBron James can affect the game in so many different ways. It reminds me, I mean, I know a lot of people are comparing him to Michael Jordan, but I think his game is more closely mirrors that of Magic Johnson, another player who defenses had to prepare for because for the most part, he was going to pass the ball off. I think he had better vision than LeBron did. But he was still just a threat where you weren't sure what he's going to do with the ball. I mean, there's several stories where teammates say he hit him in the head with a pass because you always have to be looking for those passes. And LeBron James has that kind of passing ability where you've seen where he does those no-look flick passes just down to the guy who's wide open, looks him open. So LeBron James can do it all. I think a weakness in his game for me is his free throw shooting. And the fact that he's not scoring as much, I think maybe drop him down my power rankings a little bit because you still do need to get points in the paint. And while they do have a good team that doesn't require him to score, 33 points a game like the Warriors, who they're pretty much dependent on Steph Curry for any defense that they're going to get. So I did dock him a little bit on my rankings because he's not scoring the ball as well as some of the players that are above him on the list. Going to number 7, we have Damian Lillard, who my friend Cal picked in his draft. And I was a little surprised by that choice, to be honest. But looking at his stats over the last 10 games, I can see why he did it. I mean, averaging over 30 points a game, almost 8 assists per game, shooting over 90% from the free throw line. I mean, he's got all the numbers you could hope. I mean, he's got the numbers you could want as a point guard. You know, he's able to initiate the offense. He's able to start the floor. He's able to run the floor. And like Cal said, you know, he is probably one of the most clutch players in the league right now. I mean, I would put him almost, you know, I mean, if you talk about players in the NBA that you want to have taken the last shot, I would definitely have him up there. I would want to have LeBron with the ball in his hands at the last minute, but hopefully LeBron at that point would pass it to somebody else, because that's what he's always done through his career, is he'll make the right play for basketball, even if that doesn't mean that he shoots it. And that's something that's impressive, but I would have to say Damian Lillard is probably the most clutch player in the game, in my opinion. I think that overall he can get buckets, he can do a little bit of everything, and you know, over 30 points a game, that's not bad at all. Going into number 8, we have Kawhi Leonard, who's sitting at over 28 points per game, 4 assists and 7 rebounds, shooting 52% and 39% from the three-point line. It's kind of funny that so Kawhi Leonard is one of those guys that I feel like he's a really good, talented player. He just needs a strong voice in the locker room to help him out. And unfortunately, on the Clippers, he is the vocal voice of the Clippers. And I don't think it's a great fit for him. I don't think, and I would have liked to have seen him go to the Lakers, obviously, because I'm a Lakers fan. I love the Lakers, and I think that team would have been unstoppable. But I'm glad that he, you know, felt that he had to try to bring some respectability to the Clippers. And he's having a pretty solid season. And over the last 10 games, he's having a pretty solid. He's doing a good job at helping his team win. The Clippers are currently sitting at number 3 in the Western Conference. They're sitting 2.5 games behind the Jazz and 2 games behind the Lakers, who are at number 2. So he's definitely been a contributing factor in that, especially because Paul George has been battling with injuries this season. So Kawhi Leonard has been helping to keep them afloat, which, you know, is great in the regular season. So yeah, I've got him number 8 because I think he's doing a pretty decent job. Number 9, I have Kevin Durant, averaging 26 points, 1.5 blocks, 7.3 rebounds, 52% from the line, and 41% three-point, which 41% from the three-point line, that's really good. You think of the magical number of the seasons is 50 from the field goal, 90% from the free throw line, and 40% from 3. And as of right now, I believe he's close to hitting those numbers if he hasn't already hit them yet. And the fact that he's got 1.5 blocks is something that's a little underrated. Is he can play good defense. Unfortunately, with the success of the team has me drop him a little bit because they haven't been very good. Everyone thought that with the addition of James Harden, that team was going to take off and be the runaway number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And it's probably going to take some time for those guys to gel. But I think the biggest problem is that they traded away a lot of their defensive depth. And if you don't, and there's truth to that old adage, defense wins championships. If you don't have defense, you're not going to do very good. And it's a little unfortunate that they had to get away so much depth. But I mean, they have a talented offensive front, but unfortunately, that's just not going to. I feel like that's not going to be good enough to get them through to the finals. They're going to need to have to step up their defense, and Kevin Durant is going to be a crucial part of that. Coming back from that Achilles injury, he's having himself a very solid season. And at number 10, I have his teammate James Harden, who is leading the league in assists, 21.9 points per game, 8.1 rebounds, over 10 assists, 49% field goal. So James Harden is able to put the ball in the bucket. That's something that he's always been able to do throughout his entire career. That's something that he's known for, is the fact that he can get you buckets. He can score you points. He can do a good job of passing the ball. And it's a good thing that he's doing better with assists, because on this team, he needs to be more of a facilitator, because they have 3 ball dominant guys. All these guys want the ball in their hands. They all want to be that guy taking the last shot. They all want to end. So the fact that James Harden is willing to set aside his number of points, I mean, you're talking about a guy who was averaging 30 points a game last season, or close to 30 points a game. It has been points and has led the league in points several times. And he's barely averaging 22 points a game. I put him on the list because while his scoring isn't great, I think his assists and his passing is something that's bringing him to the top. And the fact that he's also getting a little over 8 rebounds a game, that's also a pretty impressive stat. That's not something you could ignore. That's something that you have to prepare for. And the Nets are sitting at 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. They're about 3, and that's because of those two. But like I said earlier, James Harden has never been known for his defense. And while his defense has improved over the last couple of seasons, I still don't think his defense has been that great, to be honest. His defense has been lacking to me. And it's a little unfortunate to see that the team traded away all their defensive depth just to get James Harden. I understand why they did it. They felt like they needed to make a big push to catch the Lakers. But defense wins championships. So that's my top 10 power rankings. Gonna have a little bit of a shorter video tonight. But sort of want to give you guys a look at how I view the season's going so far, who the top players have been over the last 10 games. You guys are more than welcome to post your own opinions in the comments. I'll be more than happy to hear any opinions, comments, anything like that. So yeah, just a quick little, so post in the comments, and you guys all have a good rest of your evening. Bye-bye.